In the AE world, just having someone be there and happy to speak to you is not a win. When you're a BDR, a win is developing curiosity. So if they sit the meeting, that's a win. Getting someone from, yep, you understand my challenges and your solution sounds pretty good, to, yep, we need this now, let's go ahead.
Ollie Holder, a seasoned sales professional with a strong background in tech and business development.
With experience across cybersecurity, media rights and logistics, he specialises in building relationships and driving growth.
What was life like as a BDR?
Challenging. Some people love it. I'll just be straight up. I see it as somewhat of a necessary evil to becoming an AE. One of the major differences being from a BDR to an AE was...
Did you go to uni in Sydney?
Yes, I went to University of Sydney.
Nice. I'm curious because I went to uni in the UK, if you can't tell. And when I was at uni, like I wasn't the best student. I didn't love studying, but I didn't really know what I wanted to do when I was leaving university. But I actually fell into software sales, like this massive organization called SAP. And that's actually like, it was Pandora's box. I thought this industry is incredibly amazing, but I didn't necessarily know about it. But I knew that from my perspective, I wanted to get into, I was motivated by like talking to people, building relationships with people, hopefully solving problems, and then also like a good income. But what was your journey? Like, how did you find out about tech sales, and how did you get into that initially out of university in the first place?
Sure. I wish I had an answer that was different to that, but it's relatively similar. So yeah. I don't know whether things have changed a lot since I was at uni, but there still wasn't many people telling me about what a career in tech sales was, or that it even existed.
Yeah.
So I studied commerce and philosophy at Sydney. And I knew that I wanted to get into business of some sort, but ruled out a couple of sectors early on. And then, like you, I was like, I would love to essentially make a material difference to a more modern company. And there's obviously lots of ways in which you can do that, but selling new business to me was an obvious one. And I thought it sort of aligned with the skill sets that I thought I had.
Yeah. Well, what skill sets did you think you had?
Yeah, so different to what I actually had. What I thought I had was probably ability to connect with people relatively easily, a level of business acumen. So I had some foundational hard skills through my commerce degree, which I think it could apply. But I didn't have a specific interest in technology itself.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's how it started.
Yeah. Similar to me. I actually thought that negotiation was sales as well, and I used to think I was a good negotiator. I'm a terrible negotiator, but I was just curious. And so you then, like, how did you find out? Because did you start at CrowdStrike?
Correct.
Out of uni, how did you find CrowdStrike in the first place?
Oh, it was fantastic. So,
but how did you actually find them to apply for them in the first place?
LinkedIn. So I didn't know anyone there or knew of anyone that had worked there. But the LinkedIn sort of function is pretty good these days. So I just applied online, went through the interview process, and was hired as BDR.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
What was life like as a BDR?
Challenging. So there's lots of positives. So number one, I would say camaraderie. So I look back on that time with fond memories because everyone is in a similar position. You've got a few peers, not many responsibilities outside of work, so you can really get stuck into the work and also enjoy time with everyone socially. It's also quite rewarding because even sometimes more so than being an AE, if not for you, this deal wouldn't be signed and it probably wouldn't even exist. So that's a cool feeling, even though some of the work can be quite menial. The downsides are some people love it. I'll just be straight up. I see it as somewhat of a necessary evil, a necessary stepping stone to get it to becoming an AE. But the work which you're forced to do, pounding the pavement, so to speak, building resilience, making sure you're organized, working hard, developing those skills, I think stand you in very good stead for becoming an AE. And in my short experience, I think you can tell the difference between people that have cut their teeth being BDRs or SDRs versus people that haven't in the AE space.
What do you notice between the two?
Probably the assumption that it's going to come harder than you think. So one of the major differences from moving from a BDR to an AE was when you're a BDR, all you need, a win is developing curiosity. So if they sit the meeting, that's a win. In the AE world, just having someone be there and happy to speak to you is not a win. So I've found that one of the biggest challenges that I was probably not expecting as an AE was getting someone from yep, you understand my challenges and your solution sounds pretty good, to, yep, we need this now, let's go ahead.
Absolutely, yeah. And I've noticed, because I've run a few sales teams over the years, and everyone from the SDR looks at the AE role and go, "Oh, that's super easy. You just get on calls and you just close them, and then you make money." But there's almost this muscle memory and this skill set that you need to develop to go through that as well.
Yeah.
So you were with CrowdStrike for a period of time, and then you left. What was the reason that you left and you ended up landing yourself at ShipIt?
Sure. One main reason, and this would definitely be a tip for anyone looking to enter their first BDR role, and that is to look for a position, a business, and a product specifically that there is clear progression from BDR to senior BDR to then junior AE or SMB AE, whatever they call it. When I was at CrowdStrike, I was a BDR for a enterprise-only product. So essentially the customers were big banks, big government organizations, things like this. Meaning the AE, the closer for this type of role, required 5 to 10 years of experience. At the time, I didn't realize that, but as soon as I did realize that there wasn't an opportunity to graduate from BDR to junior AE, and I realized I was developing product knowledge, market knowledge, things like this that I wasn't necessarily going to utilize, that's when I decided to jump ship and find a BDR position in which I could progress through the AE ranks.
Hey guys, I really hope you're enjoying the episode. Imagine if you had your top 3 sales reps continually on the hunt for top talent as you scale your business. That would be amazing, right? Because we all know that talent can spot talent. Well, that's basically what happens when you partner with Bluebird. We help SaaS leaders like you build high-performing teams, introducing you to the best talent in the market fast. If finding A players is a vicious game of hide and seek, let us help you so you can get back to doing what you do best, serving your customers and running your business. Make sure you click on the link in the description, and we look forward to chatting soon. Now, let's get back to the conversation.
Yeah, okay. From a performance perspective, what were the sort of KPIs that you had going into ShipIt?
Essentially one, qualified meetings. So if setting a meeting wasn't good enough, the AE would have to accept that and essentially move it to the next stage. Once that happened, that's 1 point essentially, and we had a quota.
How many dials were you making? How many were inbound versus outbound?
It was almost exclusively outbound, and about 60 calls a day.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what would 60 calls translate to in terms of booked appointments or qualified appointments?
Sure. So probably about, it's been a few years, but I would say maybe if you make 60 calls, you might make 18 connects, and you might have 10 meaningful conversations, which would result in maybe 1.5 bookings a day.
Okay. So you're looking at, on a monthly basis, a goal of around 20, 25 qualified bookings.
Yeah.
And how did you go against that quota for the period that you were there?
Went well. So had great support from a managerial perspective. AEs were fantastic, great organization. So I was able to essentially hit 100% most quarters, I believe.
There's not many people that can say that they've done that. Again, there's no problem if you miss your quarter from time to time, but like the general trend and consensus, if you're over plan as an SDR, it's a really good thing. What do you put your success down to?
So being successful as a BDR, looking back, I would put it down to 2 things. The first of which would be constantly developing knowledge of the product and your customers' needs. And I found the best way to do that is exposing yourself to the conversations that your AE is having. Secondly, it is just pounding the pavement. So no matter how good you think your knowledge is or how good you think you are at speaking to prospects or whatever, you need to be hitting the numbers. You need to reverse engineer essentially to understand how many calls you need to make, how many connects you need to make, and then ultimately that'll stand you in good stead for hitting that meetings booked number.
When you think of a new business, a role, like you're out there, you're killing. You got to go find, you close, and there's often the thrill of the chase. It's getting that deal, and then it's that sense of achievement. Are there any of those sort of drivers that really you would align to, being an account executive, hunting new business versus account management?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think it comes back to the reason as to why I prefer new business. It comes back to the reasons in which I got into tech sales in the first place, which one is to make a material difference to the company I work for, and secondly, make a material difference to the company that I'm speaking to. So I believe that being in new business enables you to go to a prospect, educate them on something that they may have not thought about before, and then see right from the start to implementation, that solution make a difference for their business.
Are you motivated by money?
Yes.
Nothing wrong with that. I think you should be. What are your core motivations?
Firstly, making a material difference to the business that I work for. As I said before, I think that closing new business is one of the most obvious ways to do that. Secondly, making a material difference to the business that I'm speaking to. And again, I think being an account executive for new business puts you in a fantastic position to be able to do that.
When you look at yourself and your teammates and you look at the top performers versus the middle of the pack or the bottom of the pack, what do you see the top performers doing differently?
The moment I realized what a top account executive looked like didn't actually come through my own work. It came through a separate venture that I'm operating outside of tech sales, in which I was assessing a group of vendors and they were pitching to me. And it was clear that there were 3 characteristics that the vendor of choice had that the others didn't. The first of which would be listening. And when I say listening, I mean actually listening to me and then articulating to me to show that she had listened. Secondly, it would be competency. So although you probably aren't an actual industry authority, you need to come to the prospect with industry insights that they don't know themselves. If you're able to do that, you build credibility and then ultimately trust. And then thirdly, just connecting with the prospect on a person-to-person level. And through this, offering sort of buying as a service. So making it as easy as possible for the prospect to understand their options in market, your solution and how it's different to the others, and then ultimately coming to a decision and implementation, making that process as easy as possible. I would say those are the 3 characteristics that make a successful rep, and the 3 characteristics that I try to exhibit every day.
Yeah, awesome. Often from the outside, sales looks easy. What are the misconceptions from actually being in seat as an account executive?
That's a good point. A common misconception from people outside sales and probably SDRs as well is that if a prospect is interested and likes a solution, then it's sold. But in reality, I've found the biggest challenge has been getting a prospect from, yes, you understand my challenges, yes, I like your solution, to, yes, we need to go ahead now. So I found the majority of my closed loss deals get lost somewhere in the middle of the sales cycle in a cloud of indecision. So getting a prospect from interested to certainty is probably a thing that maybe only salespeople can understand.
Any tips through experience or battle scars that you've got for what you do differently yourself, where you'd give as tips, recommendations to people coming into the role?
One tip I would give for navigating uncertainty is to be pressure testing at each point in the sales cycle. So at the end of each call, you want to be setting clear next steps, often asking for a level of investment from the prospect. By doing this, you're able to more quickly understand whether or not they're likely to buy or not.
Cool. And in terms of development and sharpening your sword to get better, do you invest in any personal development, podcasts, reading books, and any tips or recommendations for people in a similar position to yourself?
In terms of sales education material, I was certainly someone that would absolutely pump every sales book that came across my desk. So I enjoyed the Challenger Sale. I enjoyed Never Split the Difference. But the one book I read that meant I stopped reading for a little bit was Pitch Anything by Oren Klaff. Oren is a VC guy, but I believe a lot of the fundamentals remain true for SaaS sales. And if you're looking for someone that essentially synthesizes the principles taught in Pitch Anything, but sort of translates it into a modern SaaS way of selling, there's a fantastic Twitter account that if you want to hit me up in my LinkedIn DMs, I can share with you.
Okay, awesome. Great tips. Love a good book tip, and I've read the first two, but not the third, so I'll check that one out myself. And for any sales reps, aspiring sales reps, people coming from out of industry, considering tech sales, people at university thinking about potentially this is a career, what advice would you give them?
One piece of advice I would give someone looking to get into tech sales would be to think carefully about the industry in which you're going into. I believe a good seller can sell in any industry and to anyone. However, things become easier if you have a level of organic interest in the industry for two reasons. Firstly, developing industry knowledge isn't a chore. For example, I work in retail and logistics, and I enjoy reading Inside Retail, Australia's leading retail publication, every morning. I didn't enjoy reading Australia's cybersecurity publication as much. Secondly, it also enables you to connect more authentically with the person across the Zoom call. Hopefully, it enables you to actually empathize, if not sympathize with them, maybe even relate to them. Maybe you buy the products or solutions that they sell. Ultimately, this leads to more authentic selling. That's by no means required. I've known many people that have no interest in their industry that they succeed at selling in. But from my experience, that would be a tip of mine.
Awesome. Ollie, thank you so much. That was awesome. Really great tips, and I appreciate you coming in.
Thanks, James.
Cheers.